This week on Unapologetic Uplift.
How pleasurable it is to simply be alive. Fiery and explosive and passionate and territorial. You yourself are the party. Your husband or your 25 lovers, they want to join the party to delight, to sense and delight in pleasure. We tend to disconnect ourselves from our sensitivity.
It feels to me like sensitivity meets pleasure.
Sensitivity is the way of the warrior. Pleasure is never an obligation, like zombies that are just alive but not really living. It's your life and your life only. So it's up to you to authorize yourself to fully live your life now. Like, don't wait for it.
This might break my heart, and I'm going to do it anyway.
When I think living, I think embodying the pleasure.
Get ready to rise above the noise and unlock your true potential. Welcome to Unapologetic Uplift, the podcast that's all about keeping it real and helping you live your best life. Buckle up. Get ready to learn, grow, and evolve with us on Unapologetic Uplift. New episodes released weekly.
Welcome to Unapologetic Uplift. I'm your host, Kim Staples, joined by my beautiful co-host, Ianthe Mauro, and our lovely guest today, Candia Raquel. Welcome, Candia.
Thank you for having me.
And as usual, I want to start with setting an intention on a candle and just having us all take that moment. And I encourage you at home, if you haven't started this ritual, anytime you want to solidify a wish or create an intention for your day, it just takes a second to light that candle flame. And I like to allow whatever comes in to come in. So I'm lighting this candle flame with the intention that we all get in touch with the many beautiful sides of us and that we honor all that we are for our highest and best.
And so it is. We always start our podcast interviews by allowing our guests the opportunity to introduce themselves. And really, we just want to know who you be and what the world needs to know about Candia.
Sure. I am a sensualist. I am also a scientist, an artist, and a Mexican woman that if it was only one thing I could eat for the rest of my life, that would definitely be tacos with a lot of avocado.
I love tacos too. I have them on my menu almost every week at home.
Yeah. Exquisite and practical. And I help workaholics, perhaps like we are, to overcome numbness, physical numbness and inhibition, and embody pleasure by moving sensually. And I was for a long time a Pilates master teacher. I hosted the single national franchise of the biggest Pilates brand, that is Balance Body. And I also taught in person to secretaries of state how to embody their posture and their presence, and run a governmental program on wellness. And then after the pandemic, I shifted full on to teach sensuality. But it's not sensuality as we are often marketed, of the high heels and the corset and the plumped lips and look like you're 25 and whatever, which is very external. What I want to empower, especially women, is to be sensual their own way, and sensual in the sense of embracing the sensitivity through our senses and connecting to pleasure and feeling free to express that pleasure in a way that is free from inhibition and full of authenticity, meaning that sensuality and how sensually you how you can be perceived as a sensual woman have absolutely nothing to do with your age, with your weight, or your body type. It has to do with how you embody this pleasure, how you acknowledge yourself as being your own paradise. And then when you yourself are the party, of course, your beloved, your husband, or your 25 lovers, they want to join the party. So that's key if you are looking to feel like more magnetic or more attractive. And also, if you're looking just to live your fullest life, welcoming the pleasure and the pleasure that is already here for you to savor, to delight in.
Yes, please.
You're definitely speaking our language. Candia, it's so wonderful because to hear you explain this, and I tend to write things down as I'm listening, and I do want you to tell us the term sensualist, how
Yes.
you came to that. Is that something that you had heard of before? Did you coin that phrase? Is that something that you've created? And can you break that down for us a little more? What is a sensualist?
A sensualist. Well, now as we are speaking, I am realizing that I actually invented that term. Yeah. Of course, it's easy to say that I am a scientist because I have a degree in biology and I am an anatomist and I study and dance professionally, so I am an artist, and I am a woman because my DNA and beyond gender, it's easy to say. But I came up with that term for myself, and we all are sensualists, but it's up to you to identify yourself as such. Of course, you can be a closeted sensualist and you don't have to introduce to the world as such, but a sensualist is simply identifying yourself with the delight in pleasure.
And is that your dog? Delighting in
Okay.
the pleasure. Your dog, we love it. No, it's just that we heard it and it's sweet. It's almost like your dog is saying, "That's right, mom."
Yeah. Her name is Dynamite, and she's really like fiery and explosive and passionate and territorial. And it's very interesting because inside of her wildness, her explosiveness, and even her rage, there's always this kind of embodiment and delight in herself. As you see, for example, in a lioness or a tiger, like we all animals, including us humans, we have this quality of being embodied and savoring the experience of being in our body, no matter what we are doing, like being a bit pissed off, like my dynamite dog, or being on the other range that is like being super, I don't know, cozy, napping, or if you're a cat, purring. And I think the problem with us humans is that even though we are all sensualists, we have this capacity and gift to delight, to sense and delight in pleasure. We tend to disconnect ourselves from our sensitivity. We become numb. We start to live up in our heads, and we start to identify ourselves with our discursive thinking. Like we have a non-stop gossip and conversation with our own minds, with our own discourse of language. And it is as if we detached ourselves from identifying with our bodily self, with our bodily experience that is mostly pleasurable and has nothing to do with words. It has to do with being, with sensing, with delighting. And this is our primal nature. This utmost sensitivity inside ourselves and the sensitivity to the world is how we made our way to grow since we were babies, that we couldn't speak and we couldn't think in this discursive way. So if you see babies, they are like, oh, the texture and the movement, and I don't like this, I spit it out, and I want more, and I ask for it. Like really, really in an authentic state of being. And it's very important for me to also clarify that sensuality, in the way that I talk about it, is basically a non-arousal state. It's simply being able to sense and enjoy pleasure. Like, oh, the screen of the phone is super soft, and the fragrance of the candle is exquisite. And oh, I can sense the fabric of my clothing. So this is sensuality. It's very simple, it's very easy, and that's why it's so often taken for granted. And we are sold a sexualized version of sensuality, meaning that sensuality should have a purpose, that is to finally mate and get more pleasure out of it, which is perfect. And I believe that especially for women, the sensuality on intimacy during sex is very important, meaning that sex should be a pleasurable experience for women, though it often isn't. So, having said all this super tour, yes, I coined the term sensualist. At least for me, I don't know anyone else that calls him or herself a sensualist so far, but I hope everyone starts acknowledging and identifying themselves as sensualists.
I love it. And I would identify as a sensualist. Not that I ever call myself that, but I do definitely ensure that I'm present in my body. And I love just the sensuality, the feeling of being in my body and just enjoying movement and life and having conversations like this with beautiful humans like you. And I love that you coined that term, and that is what you identify with.
I agree. And I'm going to say too, I too am a sensualist. I will out myself. And of course, you mentioned the candle and the scent, and because you coined the phrase and I'd never heard it before, and it's so beautiful, sensualist. It's also, it to me feels, when you were describing it, like a lot of the people that describe mindfulness. It feels very similar. And then I also thought it feels to me like sensitivity meets pleasure. And so who wouldn't want to be in touch with being present in the moment, being authentic, and being sensitive enough to access the pleasures that can come from the most seemingly mundane thing, like touching your phone, like you said. And I got chills when you did that. And what I love too is you've been already, I can tell, and we don't even know you yet, but I'm feeling very close to you because you're saying things that are so true. For instance, you mentioned that this is for everyone, and it's to empower. Of course, it's very empowering, particularly for women, but this is something that is accessible to everyone. And I really love that too. There's no barrier of entry to getting more sensitive and allowing that to lead us to being more authentic and experiencing pleasure in everyday things. So I just wanted to mirror that back to you. That's what I heard you saying. And it's just wonderful to have that this is your mission in life, or your gestalt, your ecosystem is all around this, is inviting us all to be able to experience this level. And I also did have a question I wrote in here, because I love defining terms. Define pleasure. What do you think the word pleasure means? Because I would love to know your definition of it.
Okay, my definition of pleasure, I am really stunned because I don't have one. And this is the reason, like, I have a hardcore background in science, and all of my work is rooted in the physiological definition of pleasure. Pleasure is an event that can be measured in the same way that pain is factual, is real, as an experience, as a physical experience, and it can be measured. And something that can help us understand pleasure is contrasting it with pain as the other side of the coin, that in a way can be a guidance, like a north star, a compass in life. Pain has a very specific brain chemistry and a very specific organization in the nervous system. The same as pain, like I can sense the soft screen of my phone and remember that Steve Jobs was such a genius. And I can also hit myself with the fucking phone to get myself a little taste of pain. And like, you cannot fake pain. Like, you will wake up in the middle of the night to pee for the third time because you had some beers last night. And then you hit your pinky toe with the bedside table, and it's like you wake up the whole neighborhood with that scream. And on top of that, you're pissed off. But it's very important to notice that when you hit your pinky toe or the painful spot in the elbow, you get like real physical pain, and you can get the measuring in the brain, and you get a certain chemistry, your heart begins to speed. And on top of that, there's an emotion. For example, if I hit myself, I often get super angry. Other times I feel sad. But very important to say is that emotions are different than sensations. Emotions are a different cognitive domain than sensations. Sensations are fleshly experience and they are measurable. The same as pleasure, but pleasure tends to be more nuanced in contrast with pain, and therefore we often dismiss pleasure in the same way that we dismiss health, because how do you feel when you're healthy? You just feel normal. We take it for granted. You just say, I don't have a flu, I don't have diarrhea, I don't have a headache. I feel good, I am normal. But in actuality, we are experiencing health, and this state of health is actually pleasurable. If you slow down a bit and you lean back a little bit, you can notice how pleasurable it is to simply be alive, to exist in a healthy way. And
Yeah.
we take that for granted. We expect pleasure to be something that we are marketed on, that we have to pay for through effort and merit and lots of money. You gotta make bank to get the babe and buy the boat and go to the Bahamas on vacations. And when you're there having brunch in the Bahamas, you get bored. And it was like, all that effort for what? For this? This feels like nothing, because we lost touch with our sensitivity to pleasure. And it's very often that we only get to remember that we have a body and that we have the ability to sense when we are in really bad pain at the emergency room, because it's part of our culture. We have a pleasure denying culture and like a motivation to hustle, which is very toxic. So all of this to say that the definition of pleasure that I talk about is the scientific definition of pleasure, that pleasure is something that is how it feels when things are working. Health and pleasure can be interchangeable experiences to me.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that as somebody that is highly sensitive, I was numb for a large portion of my life. And I think that the world that we live in can very easily create the highly sensitive people to be the ones to numb out the most, because you could be shamed for feeling your feelings simply.
Yeah, Definitely. Like stoicism is motivated and applauded, whereas sensitivity is dismissed as weakness.
Yeah,
When,
or having some type of mental health disorder.
when in actuality, sensitivity and even more hypersensitivity means a refined attunement to the state of things, to the status, the current status. And actually being sensitive means that you have the information to better adapt to the ever-changing environment. And this in the context of Darwinian evolution. Like you have better chances to survive in the forest or in the jungle or in Berlin or a crazy city if you're sensing what's going on around you and inside you, so you can reorient in space and reorganize your life rather than pushing your way forward, because we are only humans. We're gonna face like a real tiger in the jungle or someone like with more skills than you if you are in Berlin or in Tokyo, in a big city. And if we see the timeline in history, sensitivity was there, and it still is the way of the warrior. But this other toxic hustling culture is like, I don't know, like the carcass of weak masculinity that is also quite predatory and destructive to earth, of not listening, of wanting to always have the last word, to not be able to conciliate nor negotiate even, neither with the self, nor with the others, nor with the environment. And that is conducive to actually nothing. I believe that pleasure is really our North Star, our compass. Because if we are in pain, that's the clearest message that what we are doing or where we are standing is bad, it's not working, it's bad idea, it's nonsense. And we knew this since we were babies. We all, I don't know, grab an earthworm, bite it, it tasted like disgusting, and we spit it out. Or we took a bite of a rotten apple, and it was still like, you bite a piece of rotten apple pie and you're gonna get disgusted and like maybe very civilized and in a discreet way, like a lady, you're gonna spit it out. It's a reflex. We have this gag reflex with the sense of taste. And in contrast, if you grab a ripe apple that is perfumed and it's soft and it's crunchy and juicy and you can savor it, you know at a fleshly level that you are being fed with a fruit that is at its most nutritious. And because it's pleasurable, it's not pain. If you bite a cactus, you wouldn't want to take a second bite of a cactus. And it's the same with everything, but we have this cultural indoctrination to examine and to exert our personal authority as adults, and especially as women, to then decide, okay, this feels good, this doesn't feel good. I am not sure about this, so this is like paused, suspended, while I get enough information to decide on. And that should be our guide, emotionally, physically, and in our life directions, and even with ideas. Am I getting pleasure from thinking and elaborating on this idea or not? And then we know if it's conducive.
I love it. And you're really brilliant with quotes that you lay down that just come out of your mouth. So I wrote a few that I love. One is, we're in a pleasure denying culture. And I do actually want to talk about that. And I also wrote down, where would you stand on AI and the use of the internet and the way that the world is now, where so many of our experiences, particularly post 2020 all over the world, are virtual experiences. So I thought that would be an interesting take for me to hear your take on that. And then I loved, you also said stoicism is applauded. And you said that sensitivity is dismissed as weakness. And that is a huge theme that I see around. And I think sensitivity, that you have to be, like you said, because one of my favorite things you said is that it's the way of the warrior. And so sensitivity is the way of the warrior. So when sensitivity is dismissed as weakness, you're really missing the point, because a warrior is anything but weak. So if for any reason you have been in a world, anyone listening to this right now, where you have been trained that it's weak to be sensitive, I want you to hear the words of Candia Raquel. Sensitivity is the way of the warrior. So I had to share those things. And then the thing about AI and why I brought that up is that when I see things in my mind, when I'm listening and I'm deeply listening to what you say and something pops into my mind, I like to say it out loud, because I feel that somehow there's someone else out there who's thinking the same. So what do you have to say about AI? Is AI and that we're in a culture now where so much of our world is online. In fact, Kim and I, who are now close, real friends in real life and have this podcast together, we met on a social media app. We met you through our podcast, which is also online. And here we are together now, actually speaking together and having a deep conversation from 3 different countries in the world. I'm coming to you from the United States. Kim is coming to you from Canada, and you're coming to us from Mexico. So tell me about that. What do you think? Is this going to aid us? Is this hurting us in the terms of being a sensualist?
Okay. Yes, I have been tempted to freak out about AI.
Me too.
I have to confess. And I have a term that may be useful for the conversation on the topic of AI and sensuality. That is a term of Technosphere. I learned it first from my mentor, Lynn Margulis, rest in peace. Her husband was a famous one, Carl Sagan. He researched a lot and talked a lot about.
Very famous. We all know Carl Sagan.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, and his wife, my mentor, she got granted the Medal of Science from Clinton, and she's been the most relevant biologist, researcher on evolution since Darwin. So there's a lot to learn from her work. And I don't know if she coined the term technosphere, but what it means is that we are humans, and part of the extensions of our being as a collective species is the technosphere, meaning that we have airplanes and we have telephones and radio, and now we have the internet. So we have created a technosphere, we have the biosphere. Like, we're breathing this air not because it's a given, but because of the breathing and photosynthetic bacteria in the sea. So there's a reason why we are breathing this air, and we're breathing this exact percentage of oxygen because of the trees. Otherwise, if we had too much oxygen in the atmosphere, oxygen is super explosive. So everything would turn into fire, the atmosphere. So we live in a very complex cocktail of interactions as a biosphere, as living beings. And we humans, as one species that is also here, created this technosphere, like another sphere. So it's just like part of our beingness. And now we have the AI and the internet that is just another layer. But for example, there's a species of ants or termites, I don't know the exact name of those little bugs in Australia, that make that build super complex cities with ventilation systems to keep their insect babies like with the perfect temperature, and they are like less than 1 centimeter big, and they don't have like our brains, and they created those super complex systems. So as a biologist, I would say that we are not even creative at all. Life has been finding its ways since thousands of millions years before, and AI is just like a little details, like a little sprinkle that we are adding to the mix. So nothing to freak out, just like we have a lot of things to be amazed and in awe and be curious on this era that is also very chaotic and painful and unstable in many ways, but still we are living in interesting times. So I would say that we cannot help being sensual nor sensitive, because that's how we manage to stay alive, by going for things that are pleasurable, somewhat pleasurable, as numb as we may be. And the invitation is to become aware of our sensitivity and to elaborate on pleasure, to increase our pleasure capacity, to delight the most in this life that we already have, meaning we are already alive, we are already sensitive, and we are already sensual. And pleasure is our birthright. So why not claiming it? Why not living our fullest life possible? I mean, it's gonna end no matter what. So why not fully live now? And here comes the way of the warrior, that is to open up in channel and give yourself to the world and welcome the world, as this is our only chance, and not stay in the uncomfortable comfort of living the way of the warrior, because we are up in our heads, super anxious and panicking about stuff. But if we really let ourselves to go slow, lean back a little bit, breathe, sense in our animal way. And it's like this is how we have managed to stay alive. Even us that we are quite privileged with, we went to school, we have a computer, etc. We're here because we found a way to still be here. We have survived because of this, because our impulse, because of our libido. And sensuality is about also, I believe that I gave a scientific definition of pleasure, but I want to introduce the element of consent. And this is very important. This is where maturity, and this is where really the ownership of being a woman is being expressed by consenting or not consenting ourselves to experience pleasure. So it's not an obligation. Pleasure is never an obligation. It's like, okay, I can delight in the smell of my nail enamel, or I can choose not to. And the invitation is ask yourself, and perhaps you may find yourself being more gentle, more fair to yourself, less hard, less unnecessarily hard. And perhaps you can find yourself saying to yourself, yes, I want to experience this. I want to listen to my desire, and I want to welcome the satisfaction of the fulfillment of my desire. I want to arrive to the brunch that I am going to pay for with my hard earned money, and I'm going to give myself the permission. I decide to consent to myself to delight and savor and drool at every bite. And if I'm going to be with my beloved, I consent myself to expose myself as I am with love handles and wrinkles and everything. And I will allow myself to be yearned for and lusted for and desired and wanted and loved and ravished as I am now. And I can consent myself to say yes to pleasure.
I love that. And it reminded me of setting intentions. And Kim and I have talked about, we had a whole episode about manifestation and how it's misunderstood and the word is overused. But you were manifesting in what you were just saying in terms of how we define manifesting, of setting an intention. And I love how you use the word consent. It's in a very interesting way. I've not heard it used that way before, which it's consenting to ourselves, that it's for ourselves. And that's very powerful. And also I had a question for you about another thing that came up is you've mentioned you're a scientist, specifically a biologist. And I'm wondering when you were setting out as whenever it was that you got the calling, the idea, the desire to become a scientist, where did that come from? Because I have a feeling you didn't say to yourself, I'm going to become a sensualist and I'm going to start with biology. Like, how did this happen in your life? How did you become a scientist and then it turned into this beautiful sensualist?
I feel super seen with that question and I'm loving it. So I was curious to find the answer to something that I have been asking myself for a while. That is, what is life? So I had this question like, what is life? And I was like, I'm going to find the answer in science. And I pretty much found an answer in biology, especially with the approach of Lynn Margulis, and I know how we are constituted and everything. But then there was something missing, something elusive, that was to explain the experience of life. And I found more answers in art, like, okay, this is in a way how it feels to be alive, and how looking at a great painting or listening to music, being at a concert or dancing can provide you experiential information of what does it mean to be alive. And finally, well, I found that it was quite challenging to make a living as a biologist and as a dancer. So I went full on practical and decided to become a Pilates teacher that had always fed me since then, in a way. And Pilates was the perfect bringing together of science and art, like the anatomy and the awareness of your own anatomy. And finally, now sensuality, deliberately exploring pleasure and teaching about pleasure has to do with what I believe it's at the core of the answer of what is life. Because there's, and I am talking now more poetically than anything, at the core of being alive, there's this drive to be alive. We have this libido, as the psychoanalysis describes. We have this striving for surviving, and especially when we are full on in our vitality, fully grounded in our center of power, we are less striving for survive in order to survive, and we are more thriving in the delight of what it is to be alive. And this delight of being embodied, being in your flesh, being like a tiger in the wild, hunting pleasurably, is, I believe, the fullest expression of being alive. And I believe it's very important to nurture and cultivate this sensuality that is very raw, that is unapologetic, it's authentic, and not get derailed from ourselves and become like zombies that are just alive but not really living. So
Yeah.
it's very important to not fall into becoming the walking dead, but really harness, like, it's your life and your life only. So it's up to you to authorize yourself to fully live your life now. Like, don't wait for it. Like, your skin is so sensitive, and the fabrics of your clothes now, and I don't know, the saliva flooding your mouth and your eyelids and the sounds and the colors, like, this is super pleasurable.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between, like, when you're talking, it sounded like at first you were looking for what it meant to be alive, but then through the art and the dance and the Pilates, you learned what it was to be living. Because there's a difference between being alive and to actually be living. When I think alive, I think surviving. But when I think living, I think embodying the pleasure and truly just enjoying life.
Yes, truly enjoying the life. And I feel that there's a little hinge there that has to do with consent, with authorizing yourself to the experience. And yes, it's not often talked about self-consent because we set boundaries to the others. We consent the others to access or not access to us, as if we were the object of a transaction, like, I consent you to delight in me. And that's a lucky circumstance, talking from the gender perspective of women along history. No, at least you have my permission to delight in me, but that doesn't mean that I have the consent from myself to delight in the experience of whatever thing. And I feel it's very important and very challenging even for oneself to pop the question, do I want this? Yes or no? Because the central answer is not a rational one. It's something that is experienced as a full-bodied yes, in the words of Elizabeth Gilbert. She speaks of a full-bodied yes, like you feel your body like expanding, like full of desire to experience the donut or the kiss or the vacations or whatever.
Right.
But sometimes the answer doesn't come right away. Sometimes it takes 1 or 2 days.
Yeah. So, because this is Unapologetic Uplift, we always like to ask our guests, what is one thing that you will never apologize and be unapologetic for?
Okay, I will never apologize for dancing naked in public.
Woo!
We haven't heard that one yet. You got to meet my mom. There's a story
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, so it was a trap somehow, because I planned to, well, I was presenting a new dance along the company I was dancing with, and it was a premiere, and I invited all my friends and all my colleagues, from my classmates from university, from biology, and my family, and everyone was there. And my dance director had talked with everyone and asked for consent and everything. But I was doing biology practices, I don't know, in the forest or whatever. So I missed that meeting and I missed another call. And I just arrived live to the theater. And I was at the dressing room and I saw the outfit and there was only the panties. And I was like, I asked my dance teacher, like, I found the panties of my outfit, but where's the top? Where's the bra? And he just told me, your outfit is complete. And I was like, my outfit is complete. Everything slowed down. And I looked at him to the eyes and he looked back to, and we understood each other. And it was like, okay, it's up to you to decide. Are you letting everything show, or are you walking away and dropping the premiere of this dance? And I was like, okay, whatever. It was a full-bodied yes with, okay, I don't care. I'm gonna do it. And I like it because it was an authentic whole-bodied yes, meaning my rational discursive thinking and analysis and projecting and paranoia and anxiety didn't got in the way. It was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I went and did it. And fortunately, everyone clapped. And they didn't knew they were gonna see me almost naked. And I didn't knew either. And I was like with the hair completely wet. And what I didn't foresee is that I made like a little, I don't know, there was a lot of water and I was almost falling. So I was more worried about not falling on stage than worried about everybody seeing me naked. So I feel this is also a lesson on sensuality and a lesson on consent. So self-consent has to do with really knowing if you want to live the experience. And if that's the case, fully giving into it. And there's always this insecurity. Am I gonna be abandoned because the public doesn't like me as I am, or my beloved doesn't like my naked body after giving birth to twins and my belly is too loose and whatever, or maybe I don't know, the board is not gonna like my whatever proposal. So there's always this anxiety, and it makes sense because we live in community. But the source of it all is how you feel about it. And it's very important, this idea of self-consent, because it allows you to respect the boundaries of others. I have information about myself. I decided to live the experience. I decided to dance almost naked, topless. And I am providing you the information about me and my experience and my pleasure for you to decide what to do about it. But that's your problem. That's your thing. That's your issue. If you don't like me, that's your thing. It doesn't have to do with me. It has to do with your appreciation. And then, if that's your take, I am going to have enough information to see what I feel and think and do about that. Because if you don't want me, why would I want you? So it's very liberating, and especially it's respectful to yourself and respectful to the other. So in a way, sensuality in this way that is very physical and very science-based has to do with shifting the reflector towards you. We tend to look for approval, for validation, to be liked in the eyes of others and get the applause. So when you shift the reflector, then you begin to get curious about yourself. Is this pleasurable to me? Am I gonna give myself consent to do this? Am I consenting myself to give that person consent? And then things begin to get very unapologetically interesting and hot. self-consent is the key for a shared sensual experience, because you focus in yourself, in your pleasure, and if you are willing to keep on experiencing whatever you are experiencing, and then you can give consent to another one to be part of the experience, so you are not dependent on the opinion of the other one. It's like opening the doors of your inner world to share.
That's massive, not dependent on others' opinions. I mean, that's something that I love, a reminder of that in every way, shape, and form. I think we all need reminders of that, because even when we think, I'm a person that I really think that I've passed that stage of needing someone else's approval. But the truth is, even I have not passed that. There are times when I forget and I realize, wow, why am I feeling so unbelievably uncomfortable and certainly not in pleasure? It's because I am wishing and wanting someone's approval. And so the reminder of that in the way that you put it is so beautiful. And thinking about it in terms of the term, I'm just saying that a phrase that you keep using, which is self-consent, is so empowering, as opposed to being in a victim mode of, for instance, even the story that you told of dancing naked. That wasn't your idea initially, and you could have had a very different reaction. And that reaction could have put you in a victim mode. You could have walked out of the theater and everybody could have wondered what's going on. It could have created a massive drama. You could have been filled with rage, regret, who knows? But instead, you took a moment. You checked in with yourself. You said, do I consent this? Actually, I do. And this could be really interesting. Let's go for it. So it became empowering when it could have absolutely been victim mode. And I think that is the warrior.
Yes.
That is an example
Yes.
of a warrior, in my opinion. So I love that story.
Yes, yes. And I love how you framed it, because it was definitely a situation where I could very easily could see myself and actually be a victim by consenting in case I didn't want it, or not consenting and still feel like a victim. And I am very happy that my body said, yeah, I would add something that I realized that after that show, my physical posture changed, because I am 168 centimeters tall. So I am not so tall, but in Mexico I am like super tall. So I think,
And I'll have to translate that for us in America, because we don't use centimeters, and I can't in my brain translate that into feet, but I will.
yeah,
I'll do that.
so I was always like hunched and with my head pushed forward. And in a way, one teacher in Amsterdam once told me, don't apologize for existing with your posture. No, because I was. Actually, I was.
That's that, like, yeah, where we tend to.
Like, forgive me for existing. And it was so, like, my posture changed, like, okay, boobs out, and I'm here. And there's, self-consent to me is just another way to say dignity, is what you allow yourself to do. And yeah, it was a great moment, because I have no problem walking away. Actually, I have a problem like softening and opening. So yeah, and in a way, every moment is an invitation for us to ask ourselves, what are we feeling and what do we want? And finally, are we going for it? Because you can feel a certain way and want something, and still it's very wise not to go for that. So there are layers of discernment and layers of consent, but I believe it has to do finally with being sincere. Like, if I am saying no to you is because my no is as valuable as my yes. And you can know for sure that if I tell you yes, it's because I mean it, because inside the marrow of my bones, I want to say yes. And if I say no, is an expression of the respect that I have for you, and I am giving you the information that you need to either approve me or reject me, which would break my heart, definitely. But I'd rather be heartbroken from your reject than being heartbroken for not asking my heart if my heart wanted to. And that is, I believe, is super sexy.
Ooh, I do too. And I think that's also a definition of being highly sensitive, is allowing the courage to say, this might break my heart and I'm going to do it anyway.
Yes.
I'm going to risk that. And if my heart breaks, it's super sexy because I'm real and you get to see that and you get to experience what that is. And now we're in this dance together, and no one's callous in that dance. No one is hiding behind a mask in that dance. If you're brokenhearted, you're open to that. And that is very brave and beautiful. So I'm going to ask you now, how do people find you? Let's get practical with, what are you doing these days to bring sensuality, to bring the sensualist way out into the world? How do people get into that and know and learn from you? Where can people find you?
Yes, so I am very happy to have created a space for Sensualist, that is a Sensual Sessions podcast. And every week I invite somatic movement experts, the best in the world, to share about sensuality and how to embody pleasure. And this is not only for dancers, this is for accountants and the lay people. Like, this is for everyone to tap into the pleasure that is already there in you, waiting to be experienced. And you can find the Sensual Sessions podcast everywhere on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and especially if you want the episodes delivered on your inbox weekly, go grab the free guide to awaken sensuality at my website that has my name, candiaraquel.com, which is www.candiaraquel.com. And of course, I am everywhere on social media at Candia Raquel on Instagram, Candia Raquel on TikTok, Candia Raquel on Facebook, Candia Raquel on YouTube.
Very smart. By the way, everyone listening, make sure that you have one username across all platforms, because once someone finds you in one place, they can easily find you in the others. So very smart. I love that you did that. And I can't wait to tune into your podcast and hear more, because the background that you have, I mean, we only just touched on, really, the hour went by very fast, but you're being a biologist, being a scientist, being an artist, being a Pilates teacher, being a dancer, being a podcaster, being a human who is open to the courageous act of honoring sensuality in every day is so welcome to me. And the reason I talked about the AI thing and the thing is that I feel that we're getting further and further away from this. And the more we're on technology, that it's easy to forget this very intimate work. And so, not that AI takes it away from us, but it's more than ever, I feel that we are called to pay attention to our sensitivity, and that we all have this power. So thank you for reminding me and all of our listeners. And I can't wait to find more. And I also want to appreciate that you reached out to me via email, because you saw a podcast episode we did with Tressa, and you were inspired to reach out to us and want to be a part of this. So I want to thank you. It means a lot to us that people are listening. We get to meet our audience and then actually have our audience be one of our honored guests. So thank you. You're the first honored guest who came to us through our audience.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us, and encouraging everybody to go and follow Candia on her social media so you can get more. If you enjoyed this episode today, please leave us a stunning 5-star review and share us with a friend. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here with me today.
Hey.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Unapologetic Uplift. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share the love and tell a friend about us, and give us a review.
Please don't miss a thing. Subscribe to this podcast and explore our sponsors, Objects with Purpose, Eco Luxury Candles, and Divine Activation membership.
Objects with Purpose is more than an eco-luxury candle brand. They are time travel devices in the form of a candle. Light the 3 wicks representing past, present, and future with the validation that you are exactly where you need to be. And if you're ready to raise your level of consciousness and step into your unapologetic, unfiltered, and unbothered era, join the Divine Activation membership at cuttingties.coach/queen. With 3 tiers to choose from, you'll find the perfect fit to support your transformation.
Thank you for your listening and love. We'll see you next Wednesday on Unapologetic Uplift.
Welcome to the Divine Activation membership, a movement for women that are ready to raise their consciousness and step into their unapologetic, unfiltered, and unbothered era.
With your heart, live authentically and become the magnet for all of your soul's desire.
Grow, connect with your heart and body, release unhealthy and unhelpful thought patterns, heal old wounds, create new neural pathways, and reprogram your subconscious with high-value beliefs so you can manifest the life you're meant for.
Ready to take a break from what's holding you back? Visit cuttingties.coach and join the Divine Activation membership today. Hey, unapologetic souls. I'm Ianthe Mauro, founder of Objects with Purpose, candles that touch the soul and the body. I've released a limited edition 3-wick candle collection in 3 fragrances inspired by a time in history. The Time Travel Collection, because scent evokes memory and lighting a candle can truly transport you to your highest self. Anytime.
Ianthe's candles are truly special, clean, safe, even for the body as a solid perfume or massage oil, and smell amazing. But what truly fills her heart is empowering others to be seen in their best light.
In 2020, when the 200 stores that sold my candles across the country closed their doors, I knew it was time to give back. I started guiding others to launch their own candle companies and design candles and fragrances for other brands as a way to share light in a dark time.
So why settle for just any conventional candle? Light the 3 wicks in each Objects with Purpose candle. You're supporting handmade in California, small batch, artisanal, eco-luxury, and treating yourself to a memory-evoking evolution. Visit ianthemauro.com to discover your next favorite candle. Let the olfactory experience inspire cherished memories.